Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And today's show brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, that's the best in new inventory right there, and they all have great warranties. And the budget may say pre-owned inventory. Well, go with the ones that have the Sunbury Motors guarantee. They go over every vehicle. And a terrific service department that takes care of the routine, the difficult, doesn't matter. They handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. So we got Penn State, Iowa basketball tomorrow. And then after that, the Lady Lions, and this will also be on BTN tomorrow night, will get their shot at Caitlin Clark and Iowa. She's put together another great season. She's a great offensive player. She's fun to watch. I mean, now, as an all-around player, I've talked about the defense. I mean, that's fine. It's just, but she spends most of the game with the ball in her hand. She makes people around her better. And she's a fun player to watch across the board. And Penn State will take their shot. Iowa's number 2 in the country. Penn State's played well. Didn't have a great game against Michigan, but Tay's out. That hasn't helped. Full strength? Yeah, we'll see how this plays out.
I'm guessing that there's going to be a lot of points in that one.
No, and there could be because Iowa scores a lot of points.
Yeah, and Penn State can put some points up on the board too.
They can put points up on the board as well. And I think something that, for example, something about Caitlin Clark. I always talk about what is the platinum standard that makes you a lot of money in the NBA. And that is if you get 1.5 points a shot. Okay. For example, the all-time leading scorer in the men's side is Calbert Chaney. You want to know what he averaged in his 4-year career points per shot? 1.5. Wow. Amazing. Caitlin Clark this season is averaging about 1.4. I mean, Todd, that's terrific. It really is.
Especially with the amount of shots that she takes.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about 1.4 points a shot. She's already scored over 700 points this season. So, I mean, credit where credit's due. As an offensive player, she is a terrific offensive player. And guess what? She gets people to watch, and she gets people into the seats. There you go. And, you know, I mean, like as an all-around player and so forth, yeah, have I talked about, you know, the defensive side? Sure, I've talked about it because, you know, realistically, that's who she is. But as a passer, you know, really, she puts the ball in a spot where her teammates can score. She puts it in the shooting pocket. She makes her own plays. She can shoot threes. She can drive to the bucket. She's just a really good player. She's just a great player and a fun player to watch. She's a fun player to watch.
She's in the Steph zone, too, where you have to guard her as soon as she crosses half court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. And I've seen players like that. On the men's side, we're like, okay, what's his range? I said, see that middle line right there? Mm-hmm. There it is. Like, what? I remember Sean Respert, who played for Michigan State. It was the first guy I said that about. It says, actually, he walks a couple of feet inside the line. He can fire it and make it. She's a lot like that. You know? So, and she seems to handle her fame very well. I know last year when they came in here, I think they cracked 100 last year, and she played her usual great game. When the game was over with, you look out at her, and what's she doing? She's taking every picture, every selfie, signing every autograph. She understands who she is. Right? She understands she's the face of the game and doesn't seem to let it go to her head in any way, shape, or form. And she doesn't have to stay out at the Jordan Center and sign autographs and do selfies. She doesn't have to do that, but she does or has. I mean, unfortunately, they don't play here this year. But she seems to understand who she is. And that's to her credit. Like I said, last year at the Jordan Center, the game was over. Selfies, other pictures, autographs. She stayed and did the whole thing. She didn't have to do that.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
I have a caller, Bob from Hanover, on the line.
Hello, Bob. How's life in Hanover?
Oh, it's pretty good. Warming up a little bit.
Well, good. Wait till next week. You may have a different answer.
True. Hey, I have a question about NIL. I guess everybody questions something about NIL, but I find it a little, and I can't understand. NIL collectives are supposed to be separate from the universities, but they often work together. Mm-hmm. One example I have is you were talking about Caitlin Clark. She's popular on one of the insurance companies with ads now.
State Farm, yeah.
Yeah, but she wears an Iowa uniform in the ad. So is Iowa getting a piece of that action, or is this just all going to Caitlin?
Yeah, and you know what? You're not the first person that's brought that up to me this week. All right. So players are allowed to wear their uniforms if the sponsor also happens to be an official sponsor of the university.
Oh, okay.
So State Farm already has an agreement with Iowa that is a separate agreement. But the door is open for Caitlin Clark to wear her jersey in the ad, which she gets paid for, because Iowa and State Farm are already linked. So she's allowed to do that because State Farm is an official sponsor of Iowa sports.
Do you know, do most of the Big Ten schools are affiliated with State Farm, or don't you know that?
I'm not sure. Because a couple are affiliated with Allstate. I do know that. So it just depends. Everybody has their own insurance company that they're affiliated with. It just turns out State Farm is with Iowa. Like Penn State has a health agreement with Highmark, for example. Right. So everybody has their own along the way.
So I assume that Iowa has to authorize her to be able to wear it in the ads?
Because they're already a sponsor of Iowa athletics, it's already natural that she can wear the Iowa jersey because they're already linked financially, the university and the sponsor.
Yeah, the other thing I don't completely understand is I'm a long-time season ticket holder of basketball and football, but just in the past 2 years, I'm starting to get emails from the athletic department about encouraging me to donate to NIL, and why would they do that if they're separate entities? I don't understand that, and if that's really splitting
because
the affiliation with each other.
Yeah, Bob, they've loosened the rules on that as to how much the athletic department or the university can participate in. So they've loosened the rule up to give the entity, thus the athletic department, whatever, more freedom to get in contact about making contributions to name, image, and likeness. So they went from very strict rules, but as time has gone, the NCAA has allowed the loosening of rules to happen. It may not be a complete direct hey, by the way, we're from athletics, and boom, we've got our own collective. No. But they can encourage you to donate to the collective for the good of the student athletes and for the program as they view it, because they've loosened the rule up in the past year and a half.
But like Penn State, for example, can't, if like I have to donate to the Nittany Lion Club every year, and I have done that faithfully, but are they ever going to be able to add a thing saying that you also have to donate so much each year for your tickets for NIL? I guess as of now they can't do that.
Right. That's going to be something that's going to have to be brought up by the full membership of the NCAA before that ever happens. Because right now that would be a violation. So it would have to be brought up by the full membership. It cannot be done individually by schools. The avenue has to be open for them to do that.
The whole thing is very confusing to me when I see stuff related to that, and I just I don't really know what the rules are, but some of it sounds odd to me.
That's where, for example, a guy like Dan Kabbalah does a great job of being able to help players get in a direction for individual NIL opportunities, which he is allowed to do. Pat Flannery's doing the same thing for men's basketball, which he is allowed to do. And then
Flannery works for Penn State Athletics, but is affiliated with the NIL collective for Penn State.
He's helping out. He is helping out Mike Rhodes on Penn State basketball's NIL front, meeting with people that can make donations to it. Setting up things on the NIL front for Penn State moving forward in basketball. So Pat's doing that. Dan Kabbalah does that for football along the way. Because, for example, you can put together a deal with somebody. Let's take a jersey deal, all right, where all the players are going to benefit from it. That can be set up, okay? And you can then tell the players about, hey, look, this is being set up. Everybody's going to get a cut, the whole thing. So there's always that front where you have to have somebody who's a front man on something like that to do it. That's connected in the athletic department, and Dan's the one that's doing that for football.
That's interesting. The other question I thought about was if a sponsor through NIL contracts with a Penn State athlete, can they say, I will sponsor you and pay you this much a year, but I want you to sign a 2-year or 3-year contract? Can they do that and then say, because of that, you cannot leave Penn State because I have a 3-year contract with you?
Well, I'm sure it's possible. Now, whether they would be advised by whomever's representing them to do that would be a different situation. You're allowed to. And if they do, I guess it could get into that buyout clause too. Oh, there could be buyouts. I mean, there could be breach of contract. I mean, a mutual parting of the ways, whatever. Because, for example, you may say you're a sophomore and you sign a 3-year contract, but at the end of your junior year, you opt for the NFL, which you're allowed to do.
Right.
Well, okay. Now, in some ways, that makes you a more valuable entity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so
sure.
I mean that's that's what's so important about. Let's talk about Caitlin Clark and State Farm for a moment. She works out great for State Farm because she's playing extremely well. DJ Uyunglele, who had been at Clemson, was a spokesperson for Dr. Pepper, just like Bryce Young ended up being. But DJ got off to a really tough start with Clemson. They lost their first 3 games. And guess who you didn't see the rest of the season promoting Dr. Pepper? DJ Uyunglele. Right?
Yeah.
Gone. So when you're with a business, one of the keys to being associated with a business is they do have to feel like they are getting return from their investment. That's what makes them a business. So the pressure's on you to keep being relevant in terms of giving return. Caitlin Clark to her credit, gives State Farm return. And I think also brings with her an audience that they normally don't have, even though Patrick Mahomes is pretty good on it.
Yeah, I must admit, though, that this is not about Caitlin Clark, but I don't think I've ever bought anything in my life because of who's advertising for them.
Oh, neither have I. I mean, I could care less, right? It's like, it doesn't matter to me who the pitch person happens to be. I've never ever bought anything because of who the pitch person happens to be. And I've been asked by people to voice commercials. So,
and I guess it depends. It does keep you more aware of the product, which I guess is probably one of their goals of advertising with a pitch person.
Right. Look, I get on here every week, and I tell everybody that about Sunbury Motors, and hopefully it steers business towards Sunbury Motors. I get on every Monday, and I tell people about Purdy Insurance. Hopefully it steers people to Purdy Insurance. I mean, these are people that have been loyal to me since day one of this show. Brewers Outlet. That's a pretty easy one. Brewers Outlet. Right? Hopefully people like hear that on Friday and go, you know what, I think I'm going to go stock up for the weekend. I mean, so you hope that when they get involved advertising and you're the one that's putting it out there, that it does great for their business because they're loyal. They've shown their loyalty to me, to the show, to the station, and I'm more than happy to talk about what they do. After that, it's up to you as to whether you say, you know what, I was listening to Steve's show, and he said, sounds like Brewers Outlet's pretty cool. Hey, you know what? I need a new car. Maybe I'll go to Sunbury Motors. Hey, you know what? I need to have the car insured. I better go to Purdy Insurance. So along the way, you're hoping that that kind of advertising works, even though it's not, hey, I'm Steve Jones 4. They're still, advertising on the show, and I've got to mention it. And I'm happy to mention it. I'm happy to mention it because, look, I have no show without them.
Yeah, and if I lived in the vicinity of the area where your show is out of Sunbury, I definitely would consider those on my options when I need to purchase something.
That's called progress.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was just curious. As these rules evolve, it gets confusing to me, and I just don't know where it's all going to end up. The Dartmouth thing I find a little bit amusing because now I heard that the music department there is sort of challenging some stuff that if they appear, then do the musicians get a cut?
The Dartmouth thing is interesting for a lot of reasons. Now, remember, the National Labor Relations Board deals with, when it comes to universities, it has to be a private university at this point.
Uh-huh.
So, in other words, the ability of getting state-related schools involved in this is a little bit different. You notice how the challenge was from Northwestern, the challenge was from USC, the challenge was from Dartmouth. Well, they're all private schools.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
everybody in the Ivy League is a private school, but there are parts of this that I find comical. Dartmouth basketball is a revenue-producing sport. Well, yeah, they're a revenue-producing sport, but, Bob, you and I could go out and buy tickets to the Dartmouth-Harvard game, which is Saturday at Lead Arena, and you and I would spend $9 apiece, which means that we're paying $18, which means they produced revenue. The bottom line is the revenue of Dartmouth basketball versus the amount they spend on Dartmouth basketball, okay, they are losing their shirts. They are averaging 644. I'm not kidding. 644 fans a game. Okay? Is there revenue? Yeah. But the expenses versus the revenue, red versus black, guess what? You don't have to be an Ivy League person to know that they are losing their shirts.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is Penn State Athletic Department and the university always says that they're separate entities for profit and loss, and they pay for their own expenses. So could Penn State Athletic Department claim to be private even though they're affiliated with a public institution?
No, because you're still a part of the university. You have to remember that the employees of the athletic department are a part of the pension plan. They're a part of the health care plan, right? They're still a part of the university. But, and there's certain parts that there are certain bonds that go from the university to help out athletics. Conversely, athletics pays money to other entities in the university. For example, they've got just to put the court down in the Jordan Center, they have to pay $26,000 to the entity that runs the building.
Yeah, I heard that. That's interesting.
Oh, it's been like that since day one. I mean, I've talked about that from day one. All right, that's why when I always hear, and boy, an athlete, it's not like people will look at the basketball number. You put that court down 20 times a year, that's $500,000.
It's good we don't have ice in that arena.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. I just I ponder about these things sometimes, and I'm not sure where it's all going to go, but it's quite interesting.
Okay, but Bob, nobody knows where it's going to go, and everybody knows right now there's no control over it. Right now, it is just spiraling. Everybody knows it. That's why they've adapted and tweaked rules here and there to try to somehow adapt. But everybody knows that they have to have some sort of structure in place, whether it's from the federal government or whether it's from collective bargaining or some other way of doing it. Everybody knows there have to be parameters put in somewhere, sometime. They just haven't done it yet.
Right. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Tim Kurkijan next here on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Sunbury Motors.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And today's show brought to you by our great friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, online at sunburymotors.com. Ford Kia Hyundai, best new inventory with great warranties, terrific pre-owned inventory with the all-important Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department, routine, difficult. They handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Okay, so let's get Tim Kurkijan. Tim, first of all, it was really terrific to see you in Williamsport. Everybody loved having you there, and it was fun just to catch up with you for a couple of minutes.
Well, as you know, Steve, Williamsport is one of the great venues in this country. It's my favorite assignment every year. Carl Ravitch told me 8 years ago, he said, first time you go there, you won't even know what it's about, and you'll say, this is the greatest assignment. And 8 years later, he's still right about that. So I come back to Williamsport every off season and help out with the banquet because the people there are so great. I had so much fun, and boy, it was a great banquet this year. Kent DeCulvey made me laugh out loud a bunch of times.
He did. He was tremendous. He really was. Great stories across the board. The Orioles are going to leave the Angelos realm, and they've been sold. This is a young team. What potentially does this mean to the future of the Orioles, especially with the young players they have now?
Yeah, I think this is great for the franchise because it was clear with the Angelos family in charge, because they said it publicly, that affording players long-term is not going to be easy. And when you have Gunnar Henderson and Jackson Holliday and, Adley Rutschman, you have to get these guys locked up as quickly as possible, which we're seeing all across the game. I mean, it started, with the Indians in the 90s, but the Braves have brought it to an art form on how to take young guys and wrapping them up so the future is bright for years and years. That's what's going to happen since two billionaires are going to buy this team, get the whole team eventually. And if I was an Oriole fan, I would be thrilled that the right people are now in charge to eventually make sure that the best young talent doesn't get away.
And then there's another element, too, because as part of the public negotiation, there was the dangling of the lease at Camden Yards. Baltimore's such an awesome sports town. I don't have to tell you that. I mean, what does this mean long-term future about Orioles baseball in Baltimore?
Well, fortunately, it means the Orioles aren't going anywhere, nor did I ever think they were going anywhere. But still, this is great comfort for Oriole fans to know that the team will be here forever and ever, because it's a great baseball town. I grew up about 50 miles away from there, and the town has been reinvigorated by baseball and by the Orioles. You should have seen that. I'm sure you did, Steve. You should have seen that place in the heart of the pennant race last year. It was breathtaking to be there, and I covered their series at home against the Rangers on the radio with Carl Ravitch. And even though they lost 2 games there in Baltimore, the atmosphere in the ballpark was tremendous, and that's what everyone has to look forward to with this sale, with Cal Ripken on some level. We're not sure what is going to be involved in this group. This is a great time to be a baseball fan in Baltimore.
Yeah, and what do you think the addition of Corbin Burns can mean on the mound?
Yeah, he's a number 1 starting pitcher, and you don't hear that very often anymore because there aren't many number 1s left, because not only is his stuff unbelievably good, I mean, he throws a cutter at 97 miles an hour. So he has overpowering strikeout stuff, and yet a couple years ago, I'll be close on this, he went 40 strikeouts into the season before he walked anybody. Think about that for a second. Yeah. That's how good he was. That's how good he is. And this was a big risk for the Orioles because Burns was a free agent after the season, and they might not be able to re-sign him, but they're going for it now. And they went and got him with 2 good young players, Joey Ortiz and DL Hall, who are really going to help the Brewers, but they got a number 1 starting pitcher without really hurting the top 3 or 4 prospects that they have. So I would be thrilled if I were an Oriole fan knowing they have a number 1 starter to go on top of Kyle Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez, and all these other really good young arms.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think Juan Soto's in the same spot. I mean, Juan Soto ends up going to the Yankees. What impact can he have on that lineup, and what impact can he have defensively on that team?
Well, that was a really subpar offensive team last year, Steve.
Yes.
They had too many strikeouts. They relied too much on the home run. They didn't score any runs, and they were a weak offensive team last year with all that firepower. Now, it hurt, of course, that Aaron Judge was out for a good portion. But, this is a guy, Juan Soto, who will change the entire look and approach of their offense, because he's not up there, only walking, striking out, and hitting home runs. He is a great hitter, arguably the best hitter in the game. His career on-base percentage is .420. The team's on-base percentage last year was .307. He's going to make a difference every day in that lineup, and he played all 162 games last year. He'll be thrilled to be back in the pennant race, and as important as anything, he's in a contract year. So if he has a fabulous Juan Soto year, maybe the Yankees just bowl him over, or certainly somebody else will. So there's a lot to play for. I think the Yankees' offense will be demonstrably better with Juan Soto hitting second or third wherever they put him.
Give me your read on the A's situation with Las Vegas. Where is that right now? Where do they end up playing as this moves forward?
Well, this is a very confusing conversation for me because it just appears that the A's are going to end up in Las Vegas long term. The owners have already approved it, and yet the Las Vegas mayor came out yesterday and said, they need to go back and make another pitch to Oakland. Was not exactly what you were looking to hear, but it's going to be really complicated. As of now, they're going to play in the Coliseum or whatever we call it these days because they have one more year on the lease. Then they're going to probably be 3 years where we're not sure where the A's are going to play. So I find this very unfortunate. No Major League Baseball team should have to go through something like this. But this is what happens when, let's face it, the team was not run properly from above, and now they're in a predicament where they'll have a new home in theory, a great new home in Las Vegas, but how do they get there in one piece? It's going to be very, very tricky.
And what about the Rays situation in St. Petersburg? Because they're talking about 86 acres of redevelopment in the historic gas plant area for a $1.3 billion ballpark. Is that still on track?
It appears to be, but with that situation also, I'm not going to believe anything until, shovels are in the ground and real progress is being made, because there have been so many false starts on this. I think the Rays are going to stay in Florida. I think they're going to stay in that area somewhere, but I'm just not positive of what it's going to look like 5 years from now. But the bottom line is this, Steve, as you know, Oakland needs either a new stadium or a new city in which to play, and the Rays need the same thing. But it looks like they're staying, but the stadium is important, and there's still some hurdles to cross there.
Then what does that mean to the possibility of expansion, because these are still in gray areas?
Yeah, I'm in favor of expanding 2 more teams to have 16 in each league. However, there is no reason to expand until we're absolutely certain what's going to happen with the Rays and the A's. Bud Selig told me 15 years ago, if not longer, we have to figure out what to do with the Rays and the A's. And here it is 15 years later, and there's still confusion. So once they get those 2 teams completely settled, then I'm all in favor of expansion. But sorry, I don't think we should expand until we're positive that those teams are set.
And not only that, and also which markets might be available, because you don't know where they're going to end up moving to.
Right, precisely. We're not sure which markets will be out there. So still a lot of work to go on that.
Yeah, no question. Jose Altuve signed the 5-year deal with the Astros. Tim, I remember watching him in the New York Penn League with Tri-City. I was like, okay, he's a good player, And then to see what he's become. Why is he, when you've watched him a lot, why is he as good as he is, considering you're not a big man of stature?
Right. Well, Alex Cora, who was an Astros coach years ago, told me, pound for pound, Jose Altuve is the strongest man in the major leagues. When you see him hit a ball over the train tracks and you recognize that he is an inch and a half taller than me, and for those who don't know me, I am really short, and he's an inch and a half taller than me, and he hits the ball over the train track. His teammate Alex Bregman looked at me during the postseason and said, Jose Altuve is the best athlete in the major leagues, and there is not a close second. He said he runs faster than anyone on our team. He jumps higher than anyone on our team. Pound for pound, he's stronger than anyone on our team. And it was just like an amazing scouting report of this guy. There's nothing he can't do. Now it appears he's going to be an Astro for life. And even though those who had trash cans and cheating and everything on their minds, Jose Altuve is going to be a Hall of Fame second baseman someday, and he's got an outside chance to get 3,000 hits. And I'm not sure I've enjoyed watching too many players more than I've enjoyed watching him. That's how dedicated he is to being great every day.
Well, this is the test he always passed with me. He's on deck against your team, and you're like, oh, we can't let that guy get up. To me, that's the ultimate right there. I can't let that guy come to the plate. I can't.
Right, and especially in the postseason, like as we gauge all great players, are they at their best when they need to be at their best in the biggest games? That pretty much defines Jose Altuve.
And I know that I have to let you go. There's a certain time frame, and because of that, I'm going to let you go now. Thanks so much, as always, Tim, for your time. It's just fabulous.
Well, thank you, Steve. Talk to you soon.
That's Tim Kurkijan, ESPN. We had a great time. Gabe Sinacropi and everybody associated with the Williamsport Crosscutters back on January the 17th. It was a great event. Chris Carlin was put into the Cutters Hall of Fame. My good friend who's not only on ESPN, but is the play-by-play voice of Rutgers football. And I wanted to make sure I was there for Chris that night. It was really, and Tim was fabulous. Told a couple stories that he has told on this show before he told there. And the story, the Kent DeCulvey stories were an absolute, and Tim's right, a riot. They're like, oh, I wish I'd gone. It was sold out, by the way. It was sold out. We'll wrap things up in a moment. It may take a while for us to explain to the suit who Caitlin Clark is. So I don't know if we can do it in just this show. Guy asked him, he said, does she play for the Utah Jazz? No. All right, back with more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. There are certain terms that are used in sports where you just sit back and go, you got to be kidding me. Like, and I'll give you one I don't like. When a quarterback is called a game manager, right? Aren't they all? Okay? Oh, sure, there are some gunslinger types and so forth. Maybe take more chances. But, of course, that's the term being used for Brock Purdy. He's a game manager. Like, he's some sort of robot out there. Does a game manager take off and gain a first down like he did against Detroit twice? I mean, make some of the pass plays that he makes? He's a good quarterback. He is a good NFL quarterback. And for some reason, and a lot of it has to do with maybe sitting in these chairs where you're not actually out there looking at something, but the term is he's a game manager. Like, do you even know what that means? The guy is a good to very good NFL quarterback. And his team has a shot to win the Super Bowl because of how well, in part, he has played. Just like the Kansas City Chiefs have a chance to win the Super Bowl, in part because of how well their quarterback has played. But we come up with these terms, and I sit there and go, what are we doing here? Like, they're trying to put the guy down. I mean, it's almost like a put down in some ways. The guy is starting in the Super Bowl. Okay, there are 30 other starting quarterbacks that are not. I think he's good enough. Now, we'll find out whether he's good enough to win this game against this defense and this matchup on Sunday. But, Todd, it's an expression I can't stand. I mean, if he's like, you could maybe look back at the two Super Bowls the Dolphins won where Bob Greasy threw a total of 15 passes. Okay, but not in this particular year. How many pass attempts does he have in the game? How many times does he take off and run against Detroit like he did? You know, getting out of the pocket like he did and making that throw to Juszczyk on the sideline. I mean, Kyle Shanahan admits he was already looking at his play sheet to see what he had on 2nd and 20.
I think people also expect a lot more out of him. For some reason, we've talked a lot about that he's a 7th-round pick. I'm not quite sure he's started 16 games yet between taking over at the end of his rookie year and now this first full year. I mean, and he doesn't get credit for as good as he is in that short amount of time for some reason. You know, you hear a lot of people say that he's a 7th-round pick, but and the last pick in the draft, but I don't feel like people realize what that means and what he's kind of done over these last 2 seasons to be in this position.
Well, and again, because he is a 7th-round pick, he gets labeled. He's a 7th-round pick. All right, well, we know he's a 7th-round pick, so he can't be a good quarterback. He's got to be a game manager. He's a 7th-round pick. Like, there's too much labeling and simplicity put into what somebody happens to be. Guess what? You know what a 7th-round pick means? Do you know what it means? It means that you get a chance to compete for a spot on the roster. And then what you do after that is up to you. Last time I checked, the 7-time Super Bowl champion was a 6th-round pick. Okay, the guy that won the first 2 Super Bowls at quarterback was a 17th-round pick. 17th round, Bart Starr. All right? Every once in a while, you get a first overall pick like a Terry Bradshaw or a John Elway. I mean, Brett Favre won a Super Bowl. He was the second-round pick. Russell Wilson was a third-round pick. You know?
It seems like drafting isn't an exact science, Steve.
Right, it's not. And you know what? Along the way, what's interesting about it, it gets you in the door, and then it's what you do with it afterward. Because remember, Patrick Mahomes was considered, quote, a controversial pick. Why did Kansas City move up to get him? Remember that?
I do.
Right? What did they move up to get him for? Now it's like, you bring it up. No, we never said that. Yeah, you did. Okay, I remember it. Just like I remember Jim Harbaugh going over the 20-hour week and getting caught for it. Ooh, sorry. You're not supposed to remember things, I guess.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Historical knowledge is a bad thing.
Right, and you're also, I don't apologize for the ability to read. All right, so, but that is, it's what you do with the opportunity. Well, look what he's done with his opportunity. And look, the first time that they go out and do a walkthrough on Friday or Saturday, I think before his first start, Kyle Shanahan will tell you he made a bunch of mistakes where they're sitting there like going, oh, man. And Purdy came up to him after that, and he says, don't worry, in the game tomorrow, I'll be fine. And guess what? The game the next day, guess what he was? Just fine.
Did you see the 16 quarterbacks thing yesterday? They asked him if he knew the names of all the quarterbacks that were drafted, and he wouldn't answer the question, but he gave one of those smiles where it acknowledged that he knows the name of every quarterback drafted before him.
Yep. And Tom Brady knows the ones drafted in front of him, too.
Yes, he does.
All right. It's what you do with the opportunity when you get it. Brock Purdy has done a lot with it, and he's not a game manager. He is an NFL quarterback.